And welcome to the Waldoboro Comprehensive Plan public hearing. We greatly appreciate your attendance and we look forward to your comments after the presentations have been made. My name is Andy Zuliv and I'd like the other members of the committee to introduce themselves.
George Seaver, I live on Dutch Neck.
Edward Fisher, I've lived here for 20 years and I serve on the Conservation Commission.
Karen Clark, and I live on Dutch Neck.
Jen Merritt, I think I live by Warren, sort of. What's that called? East or West Waldoboro? East Waldoboro?
You're
I
breaking
think,
east.
no, not west, I think it's east.
East
I
Waldoboro.
think it's East Waldoboro. I'm Jan Minzy. I've lived here for 44 years, and I'm a member of the Select Board.
Theodore Worcester. I've lived in Waldoboro since '51 and have been involved in numerous situations.
Good and bad.
I'm Max Johnstone. I'm the town planner who's here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
And I'm Bill Napower, also a planner for the town.
I wanted to explain the purpose of the public meeting. This meeting is to accept comments and suggestions and to answer questions from the public. We accept your comments and we will use your comments to revise our plan. And this plan will be submitted to the Select Board for consideration, and it will be placed on for consideration in the June town meeting. So consider this your time to let us know if we have left anything out, or need to clarify something, or change some of the wording before it goes into the Select Board. We really do appreciate your input, and we're here to listen. Thank you very much.
What is the date that it's going forward?
It will go to the Select Board at the next Select Board meeting, and the final date,
Would be the June
it'll be in the June
warrant,
warrant.
the referendum.
So the committee has been working on this plan for about 2.5 years, pretty consistently. We started, I don't remember exactly the date of the year, but it's been a long process. We started by holding a series of 6 or 7, I think 7 focus groups in town here. They were facilitated by, we had a consultant at that time who was helping us, and they were facilitated by the consultant. It ended up developing a very long list of questions and thoughts and wishes and desires and so forth, and that we took that and we met around that. We then heard from each department in the town who presented to us their current situation and their desires and wishes going forward, what they thought the town might need in the next 10 or 15 years, things we were getting too big for, and so that we would need to plan for. So we took all that information, plus all the demographic information and the backup data that we got from Bill and Max, who helped us gather all that. And that kind of, and the other thing we did was we took all the past processes. So I guess you were gonna list those, but anyway, and those were all incorporated into our draft.
Part 1 and Part 2.
Part 1 and Part 2. So Part 1, if you guys have your copies of the draft, is the draft of the proposed goals and policies. This is sort of like a strategic growth plan for the town, similar to what you might develop for a business to cover the next, say, 15 or 20 years. And Part 2 is all the backup data, which you guys will probably go through, but it's a lot of data. And some of it's so small, I don't know if you can, right now, can't read it. All the charts, so be careful. I use my magnifiers. And I think that's my part.
Well, what is the plan? And just to echo Jen and Karen, we've had a dedicated group of citizens here who've been working on this for, I didn't realize it was almost 3 years. Doesn't time fly? At any rate, we've been working on this, and we got both historic and current information. From the historic information, we went with the 1998 comprehensive plan, and we looked through that step by step to see what had been accomplished, what was partially accomplished, what still needed to be done. And we were pleasantly surprised that many of those items in there had been completed. So that was a good learning experience for us. We used the visioning project from 2010 and the downtown master plan from, I think it was 2011. And both of those projects I was involved in, as were some of the other members of this board. For the current information, as Jen said, we had focus groups, and we tried to use all the demographics we could to gather the people so that they would represent the diversity that our town has. That was important to us. We had coffee clatches where people on the street could stop in and give their opinions and ideas, and we would ask questions and they would give information. It was informal and very nice. We also interviewed the department heads, of all the department heads for the town, and what an educational experience that was for all of us. And it showed us how the municipal departments work together as a group, and we learned about them individually, and we also learned how they worked collectively together. That was a wonderful thing. This is just a guideline. It's not a rule book. It's a foundation for informed decision-making, is basically what this is. On to the next.
So throughout part one of the comprehensive plan, it's divided into different sections regarding demographics, land use districts, and so on. And in each of those sections, they're broken into 3 parts: goals, issues, and actions that the town should take to address such items. And so that's just something you can read through to see what we've come up with to address those areas.
The other thing it does is, one of our concerns was that the plan should be alive, meaning that we would have responsible parties designated for the goal areas to move those kinds of things along. It could be departments in the town as well as committees in the town. And there are some that might not be assigned yet that we will see that those get assigned. Our idea was that going forward, that we would formally every 5 years or so take a look at how we were doing and revisit this document so that it had meaning for us moving forward. And let's see if I left anything out. Oh, and so it's full of, you'll see, part 1 and part 2, or part 1 in particular, has short-term goals and long-term goals. Some of the long-term goals are, created by people's wishes and desires or things that people would like to see happen, like, for instance, more jobs for people, perhaps things that might be attractive to young families, to attract young families. So it's full of everything we could find through these other plans and through the focus groups and whatever feedback we've already received. We tried to incorporate everything in here.
Just a quick addition to that,
Yep.
I think. One of the discussions that periodically comes up in all these kinds of discussions is the land use ordinance. I think the conclusion was reached that the next round of revisions, whether they're editorial or more significant, would be informed by the outcome of this process, as opposed to the other way around. This informs what the land use ordinance, if there are any changes needed or not, but it follows.
It's a separate process.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
separate process
Yeah.
informed by this process.
Yeah.
And to continue on along those lines, this basically isn't a fixed document. This is a document that we are going to manipulate, change, and as the conditions around us change, we will effectively modify some of these goals that we have or some of these actions that we're going to take. We're going to do it by the committees that are assigned to some of these goals currently in the document. And we're going to create new committees along the way that will help to do certain things. Again, especially land ordinance, that may require a special committee to review some of things in much greater detail than is done here in a plan that just suggests manners by which we may do things. A full land ordinance committee would get a little more specific about these things. So this is not going to stop here. It is going to continue to live and to change, and the responsibilities will be assigned so that this will not sit on a shelf. It will be a continuously in-use document.
I would like to add that, we haven't mentioned it yet, I thought we were, that this is a vital document necessary to the town if we want to get any grants going forward. It's not just guidelines, it is a key to get into the grant world. And we need it,
And it's required by statute, by state statute, to have a current comprehensive plan in each town.
I'm just going to reiterate that it's a guideline, it's not a rule book. Again, it's the foundation for informed decision-making. It's sort of like us senior citizens. It holds a lot of weight, but not a lot of teeth. So the same rules will apply that presently apply if there are going to be any decisions made, whether they go to the planning board, the select board, town meeting. So this will change none of that. The same process to implement any changes will be going on. And we hope that will help all of us to think critically, to act responsibly, to lead effectively, and to live humanely.
Thank you. And now the meeting is open for public comment, so we would like to hear from you very much.
Yeah, we just ask that you just identify yourself, and the only thing that we're going to try to do is make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak, so that if there's a lot of people here, so you have different points of view and ideas and whatever, we want to hear from you.
Do we need them to stand at the podium?
I don't think we necessarily do,
Okay.
but
No,
if you're
it's just there.
Yeah, so if you're comfortable speaking from your seat, go right ahead. You don't have to stand up. I just want to preface, before we ask it for any comments, with two things just to take up what Ed said, is that, and Jen, that the comprehensive plan is required by Maine statute, and it needs to get updated periodically, so that's the reason why Waldoboro is undertaking this process. State says every 10 or 12 years, but typically we look at after a period has gone by where there's been changes in the community, or if your existing plan no longer kind of fits your needs. As George was saying before, a lot of those elements of the 98 plan have been undertaken, so it's time to kind of look at it again on that. And then the last thing is that, as been said before, the plan is just that. It's a plan. It's the impetus to get us moving in a direction, and the responsibility for implementing the plan will be various committees. And as Jen said, that after they come up with some, resolution or idea, it goes through the normal process for public input and approval on that. So we'll just open it for questions, and again, if you would just identify yourselves. And so any comments or questions?
we have some letter inputs we have some inputs by mail.
Yes, we do,
that are
and I
pretty good,
figured
I
we.
think some of the people who are favoring that position are here tonight, so
Yeah.
maybe we could read one of the letters, or.
Well, what I'd like to do is ask the people who are here for this comment, and then we'll get to the letter. Just to respect the people that are here, and then we'll get from there. Any comments, or anyone?
I'll go first.
Sure, go right ahead.
My name is Keith Langendorfer. I live on Dutch Neck, and I want to applaud you folks for the amount of time and effort you put into the document. I think
Thank you.
It's very clear how much effort you put into this, and we're lucky to have you folks working on things of this nature. As a Dutch Neck resident, though, I think if I wanted to zero in on one area in particular that concerns me greatly, and I think some of the letters that you probably will be reading afterwards probably echo this. It's on page 23, and it's the bullet item that's down about a third of the page, and it says the existing shoreland district boundaries designated for marine activities at the Dutch Neck Marine Park are recommended to be extended beyond a 250-foot setback from the water line to encompass the entire town-owned parcel. If I look at you know, the way it was, the town acquired it, I guess way back when because of a tax situation. And
That's not true.
Well,
That's not true.
Yeah.
let's let
Okay.
people speak.
All right. Well, let me just, okay, there was a bridge room run, sorry. I repeated it. But being a resident of Dutch Neck and seeing if it is changed from residential to the shoreland terminology, I think it opens it up to the potential with planning board approval for commercial and possibly industrial use, which I think is entirely, and not the nature of the neighborhood, the area in itself, and it kind of goes counter to some of the mission information that I saw on some of the other documentation that you folks had, including on page 10-7 of Comp Plan Part 2, Marine Park of Dutch Neck, public recreational access, point with parking ramp. Description of primary view of significance, long views in every direction across Broad Bay, up and down river. Rated significance is critical. And then on in that same document, again, great job on you guys' part. You've got different maps for different parts of areas, you know, within Waldoboro. And then on the one that specifically talks about Gross Neck and Dutch Neck, I guess it's kind of like a mission thing. Preserve water views and open space, maintain undeveloped shoreline, and ensure public access for the same. So,
Is that in our part 2?
It's in the land use, the existing land use.
Oh,
yeah, it's the
okay.
things here.
Sorry.
I guess long and short of it is that my wife and I, and she couldn't be here tonight, are deeply opposed to it changing from a 250-foot setback to encompassing the entire parcel.
So to summarize, you would prefer to see it stay the way it is in
That's
terms of
correct.
the zoning.
That's correct.
Sorry, thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you.
Anyone else on that same issue or different issue?
Yeah, GIF hammer, and I just wanted to echo what Keith was saying, because I think we have a unique combination of, community down in Dutch Neck, and Gross Neck is very similar. So I would hate to see that wildly disrupted because of commercial or heavy industrial kinds of activities. So it's kind of one of the reasons that we live down in that part of town, and that would adversely affect the way that the town is viewed, and probably also increase traffic and other things on a road that's already, people fly down there, so like not to increase fast traffic.
Yeah. Let's let the.
Well, just
go ahead,
for clarity,
Yeah.
two people have said heavy industry. I sure never thought of heavy industry down there. What does our language say that?
Yeah, we would have to, I think most of it would be geared towards more fishing-related type activity, but let's look
Okay,
at.
that's a bloated
Yeah,
word.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry Grant, I also from Dutch Neck, in the same neighborhood. And I absolutely concur with that, but, and in a general sense, I think when you open the door to that, to any sort of change in the development here, I mean, there is clearly you have a vision for the town, and that's a great thing. But in my experience, and having lived on waterfronts in other places, people with the best intentions have opened the door a little bit to developments and totally changed the character and beauty of those waterfront communities. And to me, that's one of the most valuable assets of this community. I mean, practically, it may make sense now in the economy for certain people or a certain part of the population, but I think as, you know, protectors of the town, which you obviously are and your hearts are in it, I think it's important to take a strategic, long-term view of it and say, look, if we make that change on Dutch Neck, you can never go back, because it will open the door, guaranteed. I've seen it happen time and again in a number of places. And then you look at other communities that have done exactly the opposite, where they preserve the shoreline and the characteristics and the heritage of, you know, the old-time heritage of fishing and shipbuilding and the local arts and local farming and things, and turn that into basically an attraction and an economy in itself. That is a much better long-term outlook, in my opinion. And I think rezoning of that or changing the zoning would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, I don't want to dig it, but just ask a question. So you would see if traditional activities as you just described, if they were fostered in that area, that would be acceptable, like, you know, traditional shipbuilding, as long as the scale was appropriate? I'm kind of gleaning from what you said.
For example, you know, Storer Lumber used to be the shipbuilding facilities, okay? So something, you know, they're a great business to have in the town, but at that particular location, you could have like, I could see that could be a great like custom shipbuilding place or something, and it was perfect where it was made for it.
Where
Yeah.
Storer Lumber is.
Where Storer
Oh, all right,
Lumber is
all right,
now.
yeah.
But
Right.
not-
Yeah, that's what I
not
wanted
on
to-
Dutch Neck Road, that's not, no,
Just
it's
all right.
different, I mean, it's a different.
Well, that's why I wanted it, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I mean,
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
it's a residential community, and, you know, has great potential to develop in a cultural and artistic way, I think, as well as, you know, protect and be like a destination for people to go, which it is. I mean, that's how I discovered it years ago.
Yeah.
You know,
It
it's
is
so
a beautiful
It's
spot.
a beautiful
It
place,
is.
yeah.
Any other comments?
You want to go first?
Could be on that, or, well, let's take it from the public first on that. Any other comments on any other subject, or that same subject, or Marcia?
No, different subject.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
I'm Marcia Smolin, hi.
Thanks,
Just-
John.
The next one down, the existing boundaries of the industrial district encompassing the business park at One Pie Row along Route 32. Is that the same thing as the Waldeboro Business Park, or are they two?
It is
It's
identical.
Same.
Okay, because I
What-
just was confused.
Yeah, it's described by different names, so sometimes we try to use, you know, sometimes we might have described it with a different name. Go ahead.
I guess the next question would be, you know, municipal sewer projects are very expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be a big issue to try and accommodate that, get the money for it. I don't know how you do it.
I'm the owner of the business park. We discussed the, I guess whether we call it sequencing or priorities, but I personally said that would be way down the list. We do pretty well now with septic systems like everybody has. There are some businesses that the town might like that would want to have sewers, but they aren't there now, and we don't have. Anyway, I personally suggested that be at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, Marcia, that's, Jen mentioned that there's long-term goals. That's one of the long-term goals. And that's like an item where we might think it's a good idea, and you might start planning and thinking about it, but to identify the funds for that, I mean, that's like a 20 or 30-year project. Yeah, Julie.
Hi, Julie Kaiser, Town Manager. As far as anything with sewers, I think the priority would be, and I said this at our Economic Development Committee meeting, it's going to be getting septic systems that are along the river off of septic systems and on to a sewer. So long before that, something like that probably would be done. We also have other areas of town that have a higher concentration of housing that we would want to address. But the first priority is always going to be the health
Water
program.
quality, yeah. That's a good point. Marcia, did you have anything else?
Yes, I do. I was wondering, down in that area, it seems very cramped. Is it? Or is there a lot of growth area there?
There's
Is there a lot
six,
of
there's
growth?
about, well, probably 40 more acres
Oh, okay.
available. There's compact and there's cramped. We think of it as compact.
Okay, sorry.
And actually, business parks are usually compact for real good reasons, you know, in terms of trying to keep them close and not expand the parking way out and all that kind of stuff.
So you do see, a future for expansion there then?
Yeah, yes, there's some people we're working with now, but believe me, by the time you get something through the planning board, you're gonna like it.
It's usually with industrial parks, like some of the issues with Dutch Neck is that we try to develop, like you were mentioning with store lumber, you try to develop where they're already at, because there's always, they could potentially be viewed as nuisance type activities, so you want to expand them in areas where they're already acceptable, where you have land for development, just a.
We have no neighbors that we bother.
Right. I was concerned you were gonna go across the road into that beautiful farmland over there.
That's not mine, that belongs to somebody. It would be a good, if the town needed more industrial space, they aren't putting cows there, but that's really beside this. We have no say in that, that's private property. And it's not zoned industrial, I don't believe.
No, it's not. No. Marcia, do you have anything?
I think that's it for now. Thank you.
So, I can do all my comments, but mine was more specific to what was happening on Dutch Neck.
Sure.
So I'm Tara Pilot, I live on Dutch Neck Road. And my comments are just as a resident. But specific to the community visioning goals on Gross Neck and Dutch Neck Road, as well as page 26. I definitely understand the concerns of my neighbors, and it's so nice to meet everyone, if I can add. I just wanted to say, and I think probably everyone in my life has heard me say this, a lot of it's just language changes and drilling down. When we talk about maintaining undeveloped shoreline, open space, and water views, what does that really mean? You can say undeveloped, and that means something to one person, and someone went to commercial and industrial development versus, well, my neighbor has a 32-acre parcel for sale. Maybe they'd like to sell off part of that, and someone wants to put a house a little bit closer to the water, and that's not necessarily really affecting too much. And if you're trying to really attract people to the area and say, we have this attractive waterfront property for sale, this is a really great area, then that's actually probably a decent idea, as opposed to, as we've said, commercial industrial activities and things. I haven't had as many thoughts on the marine park activities, but I'm sure that you're getting a lot of emails about that. So that was really my only comment there, is just really cleaning up that language to specify what undeveloped
Exactly.
means in this case.
Could we talk for a second to kind of enrich what you're saying, or drill down into it?
Sure.
One of the things that has troubled me, I have only lived there 41 years, I'm from away, but I've watched it go from, well, when I first moved there, the way they tarred the road was a tank of oil that drizzled on the sand, literally.
I've seen some of those news articles.
Yeah, that's, anyway, raised 6 kids there. It's gone through a lot of changes. There's a lot more houses built. One of the things that has, and people in this committee have heard me say this, one of the things that to me is such a problem is that as taxes go up, as they inevitably do, slower in Waldeboro than most places, but as taxes go up, those big tracts of land along the water, the ones we would like to save and keep, just like they are if possible, there's more and more reason for people to sell off land so they can afford to stay on the land they've got. So part of the tensions that we face as we work on this is how do you increase the tax base and create jobs and do all those development things so that it doesn't put the burden on the big tracts of land that you can put a beautiful house there, but you have changed it. And I've watched it change with beautiful houses. I watched your house being built. It's okay.
Thank
But
goodness.
but I just want, we should all, as we struggle with it, we should be aware of that tension between economic development and maintaining those great fields.
And it wasn't that long ago that we lost very large employers in town. In the mid-2000s, we lost Siemens, where there were hundreds of people employed there. And we lost, what was the one that was down by Dow Furniture across the street?
Oh, that was Science.
Science Source
Yes.
was nationally
Great
known, wonderful business, paid really a good wage, had real stable. We lost Taction, which we had 3 shifts a day on the busy season. There's so many wonderful businesses that we lost just in that period of maybe 10 years.
Just for perspective, the Madomic Canning Factory, where all of the one pie squash and chicken used to come from, used to employ 100 and something people. That's where the business park is now, and we've gradually built that up with more businesses, so that in Winslow's Mills now, there's probably over 100 people working again. And one of the businesses that I'm involved in harvests seaweed, sometimes from the Dutch Neck Landing.
And all that certainly makes sense, and I applaud that. I have several comments you might have noticed from my notes. But I will say, you know, growing up in Maine, you know, having the ideals that we do, when you have this land, and it means so much to you, the other piece of that is having within some rights to be able to do what you want with it. And so, you know, if someone in my family was to buy up 32 acres and wanted to leave that and go, here, you have one, and here, you know, my sister gets the other, and each put a house on it, you know, I don't necessarily think that that's really outside the scope of development, but, you know, again, that's clarifying
I just
the
don't think people
language.
should be forced to it by their property taxes.
Right.
Right.
I don't think we should be compelled, I mean.
To
there's-
sell
No,
off.
I'd agree with that
Yeah.
point.
And if you
Just
could,
looking at landowners' rights.
if you could help us with the language in some way, if you see
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
specific language that you feel could be tweaked in a special way, absolutely, send us a note, send us an email, let us know, share it with us, because that will help us in our review process.
Yeah, she's on the planning board, and you had mentioned one of the committees would be a land use committee that
Yes.
would look at the, so we're gonna tap some of the expertise. Barbara
Excellent.
is another member that's hiding behind there on the comp plan committee and also the planning board.
I'm just a resident.
Yeah, are there any other comments? I wanna make sure we get to everyone. Did you have anything that you would like to say, or?
We got one in the back.
Oh, in back, yeah, Barbara? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I'd like to say something positive about possibilities of what might happen on Dutch Neck. I know there was a meeting, and somebody did a presentation, and it didn't go over very well. I wish I would have been able to attend it myself, but I wasn't invited. But anyway, there's 20 acres there, and right now, the way the land use ordinance is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, 250 feet is available for all kinds of marine activities if we wanted to pursue it. It could be very active, right on the shore, very busy, so much for the pristine water line, water view there. It could look very different very fast, the way it's set up right now. By creatively and thoughtfully using the full 20 acres, some activity could be pulled back into the lot, and the whole lot could be designed in such a way as to be, you know, a smart use of the property, and still include the public facilities and people launching their boats, and the Clammer's still using it. There's 20 acres. There's a lot of possibility there. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a division of Darling Marine Center there, some kind of research facility. We had students coming doing their PhD, school kids coming and seeing some sort of activity on the site. I mean, to say no, not in my backyard so quickly, seems to me like a real shame for the town. And this is such an asset to our town and to the whole mid-coast to have this kind of access to the water like this. And of course, things like how much traffic would it generate, how many people, you know, a lot of things to immediately say no. It just seems a shame.
I'm just gonna put you on the spot for a minute, Barbara, on that there, because when you mention something like that to a planner, we always think, oh, good, somebody's gonna think things through and try to fit all the congruent pieces together. Can you flesh that out a little bit?
Don't you put me on a job.
Is that what can you just flesh that out a little bit more?
Well, I'm thinking about down in Bristol, I don't know if anyone's been to Darling Marine Center. There's plenty of beautiful properties adjacent to it. There's lots of interesting things going on. People come from all over the world to give talks and to pursue some research. It's fascinating. I don't see it as how it could be obviously it's a bigger scale. It's part of the University of Maine, et cetera. But there's that's the only example I can come with up at the moment. I could love to look up things that are at a smaller scale, but I think we should look at it as a possibility, a rich possibility, and we're lucky to have it.
All right, thank you very much. You had a comment.
So,
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna say something completely different. I do think that land is it's beautiful. It has a wonderful potential as a natural resource, the way that it is, because it's such a beautiful piece of land, and it is, there's kayakers and people that use it and go there because it's beautiful, and maybe we can exploit that rather than developing it. That may not be an improvement to it, but somehow make it an eco destination or something like that, and try to preserve the natural beauty and the unique character that we have, because again, as my husband said, once we lose it, it's gone.
So you would like to see more recreation related to the
Right.
water and respect the natural surroundings?
Right.
Just one quick comment, and I understand what you're saying, and there is a critical difference between that property and Dutch Neck and Bristol, is that Bristol is essentially on the ocean, and this is a riverfront, really, where if you look at the geography, there's a big difference there.
It's the reason that it's even under consideration is that that's where the water is still deep, that's ocean water.
Oh, I understand, I know, it's very deep out, this
Right
place
off
is,
the
it's extremely deep, yeah, I understand that.
It's not
But
ocean.
there is a difference.
But this is the Damariscotta River or the Madomic River.
Yep.
Do you want,
I just want to make one point of clarification here. The Conservation Commission is actively planning to have at least 2 picnic tables and a hiking trail and some more hiking trails down at Dutch Neck.
glad you said that.
For years, I've been urging that place to be more than a place for clammers and vandals. And we may be able to succeed. But I'm not, we've heard a lot of talk about you can put this here and you can put there. Has anybody looked and seen what what it would take to build anything there? It's mostly ledge. I know at one point they were planning on putting ball fields down there right as you pulled into the place.
Yeah.
And the soil was not
I've heard
proper.
that, yeah.
So I mean, I'm not sure you can put anything there.
Brooks.
And I would be so happy just to see a thriving, recreational, everybody was down there, they go out in kayaks, and that seems to be a good thing. And it's a really volatile issue.
Yeah.
So it might be worth backing off a little
There
bit.
was a cement outhouse there 40 years ago that somebody tipped over.
Oh, yeah. They're planning on a pool.
Are there any other comments about that or anything else?
I'm taking my hat off though now as the
Yeah.
town manager, and I'm going into property owner. I think that there's some short-sightedness, and I understand when I looked around what I wanted to live next to. But I think when we throw out that there's just clammers and vandals, the clamming industry is the #1 industry in this community. And maybe people don't like them in their neighborhood, but I think that we like the tax money and the purchasing power that they put into the community to the tune of over $2 million. I mean, that might not mean much to some people, but this community is a very diverse socioeconomic community with a 20% poverty level that some of these people that maybe you don't want around live in. And I think that maybe we need to be a little bit more kinder and gentler to that community, because they're not all just clammers and vandals. Also, I think that the community was founded on shipbuilding. It's now a clamming community. I would be very careful to gentrify such a place. And what it sounds like to me here tonight, as somebody who moved from away to here, is I came here because of what existed here. So I get the whole, I want it to kind of stay the same, but what existed here was a vibrant waterfront working community, which Dutch Neck was a part of at one point. I go to Mr. Seaver's point that things have changed drastically from when he moved there 41 years ago. So I think we have to not lose sight of the character of the working waterfront in the state of Maine. That's what Maine's about. You can see that by the pictures on the wall here. So just be very, I just want to caution everybody, the commercial fishing industry is a vital part of our community, and I think when you start kind of labeling things and we just want residential in one place, or you talk about traffic, the biggest complaints I get are from Jefferson and Friendship Street about traffic. And also, as you look at this, and I think the comp plan, I think the comp committee has done a fabulous job, and I should say thank you too, for all the efforts that you put into it, but you have to look at it as a whole. And as important as these neighborhoods are, because your neighborhoods, and you get to think, well, we're the neighborhood, there's a lot of other neighborhoods in the community, and that Dutch Neck Marine Park is for everyone in town. It's not just the neighborhood park, it's a community, and there's a lot of other interests. So I just want everybody to understand that, and Barbara alluded to the aquaculture venture that everybody was up in arms about. We didn't even get to the planning stage of that before it was no, 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 no. I will tell you, that was the worst 2 weeks that I've had in the town of Waldeboro, and I love this community, I love the people in it. Again, I go with what you're, we need to have open minds about this. I don't think anybody's talking about putting anything huge, industrial nuclear generating station or something like that down there. But there are a lot of options that we have, and we can't close the door on any options, whether it's in Dutch Neck Marine Park, whether it's the landing, whether it's the farm across from the park, the business park. So I would just say, keep your minds open. I know it's hard when it's, right next to you, but it's like Mrs. Minzy said, it's a roadmap. It's not it's not a Bible. I always say it's a plan. And there's a lot more steps to it. And you also have to remember is that any type of development like that has to go through the planning board. And I like to think that we have a pretty good planning board nowadays. They seem to be good people who really look at things. And I know that's a scary thing for everybody to wrap their heads around. Any type of change isn't good. But like you said, Darling, I think that was a great analogy of what can happen there. And even, nice types, there are some very good aquaculture development ideas out there that are non-intrusive. And that's what I have to say as a resident, not so much as our property owner, not future resident, not so much as a town manager. So.
I'll just clarify, that's some of the hard work this committee has to do, is that it's like when you have a balloon, you push in this side, it comes out that side, and you look at all different things, and there's always a consequence to, you move here, and there's another consequence here. So the committee had a difficult job putting this plan together and trying to get it all to fit. Second point is, that's why we're here to listen, and that listening and conversation is going to go on further. So, and we need that to happen, because good ideas come when we all get together and think things through. So Barbara, I like that idea of yours of thinking about this maybe. And as Ed said, there's the recreation aspect, there's the fishing aspect, there's the natural aspect, and maybe there's a way that those things could go coexist, and to respect so things don't get out of hand, because nobody wants that. Go ahead.
Well, actually, we had,
I'm sorry.
Can I just quickly apologize? When I said clammers and vandals, I meant two different kinds of people.
We knew that.
The
We knew
vandals
that.
were all local, the clammers were nice.
Acton was gonna correct you very quickly.
But actually, we,
I was gonna come to your defense too, because I didn't associate the two as one. That was misrepresented, because everyone who spoke with an interest in and concerns over any development of a large building or agriculture facility or something down in that park, nobody said anything at all against the clammers. I mean, there's total respect for that. So they're not related things. It's not a gentrification issue to me. It's an issue of protecting a valuable asset.
I was just going to sort of add that our group, we are fortunate that we have people with a lot of different histories and upbringings. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., but I'm an avid outdoorsman and an avid waterman, and spent much of my life on the Chesapeake Bay, crabbing and fishing. And what you talk about, I saw in spades down on the Chesapeake Bay, where they started building townhouse developments along the tributary streams where they emptied in, and they didn't think very carefully about the cause and effect. And they cleared out brushes, and you had a combination of storm sewer runoff into these tributary streams where we had a huge soft shell clam industry down there and an oyster industry, and they hadn't really thought about storm sewer runoff. And that was causing a big problem. And then farmers all along the tributary streams were using a pesticide called keepone, which got into the clams and oysters, and it sterilized them. And so, what was, sort of akin to the industry that we have here in the Madomic is still gone. They just, they're not likely ever to bring it back. So, I sort of bring that kind of a viewpoint in, and it may be an over-exaggeration for what, may be proposed here, but I think your points to me are extremely well taken. That, once you start that cycle, it's really hard to bring it back. And, the Chesapeake Bay has suffered greatly, and, they've gone to great lengths to bring back the stripers and things. And, this river does so many things. It's a sportsperson's river, it's a commercial fishing river, and it's, people that just like to look out of their windows, like we're fortunate enough to do, and look at the river in the morning. So, we are trying to, it's difficult. I mean, we're trying to balance a lot of, Waldoboro is a big area, and it's got multiple different faces to it. My particular focus is on the river and the, Muscongas Bay, but, we've got large rural areas, we've got the in-town area, and it's been a really difficult thing to try to come up with it, which is why, anything you can provide to us that will assist us is hugely helpful. But that's a perspective I bring with me, because I, came from, an area where, I saw the damage that overdevelopment can cause. So it's, you really have to be careful.
Let's see if we can get other people. Yeah, good.
Oh, I'm not other people.
No, I want to make sure
I don't want
everyone
to
has a
suck all
chance
the air
to
out of the
speak.
room at this point. No, I think George's and Julie's points were really well taken, and I read both these documents and took as many notes as possible, but just looking at pages 24 and pages 6-7, really outlining the fact that our tax base right now is at 16%, I believe, for commercial and industrial, and if we don't solve that problem, being judicious and taking that into account and cautious, but we're either going to put people out of their homes or we're going to carry this full weight of the town's administration costs, which are only going to go up on the shoulders of the people that you see sitting here. So it is really important to kind of have this open mind and be really involved. It's very encouraging to see this amount of people, because I've seen some town meetings on tape and it's not pretty.
We had and I'm afraid I dragged them out, but we had fairly lengthy discussions
Oh, yeah.
about whether the trajectory should be to age Waldoboro or to make it more attractive to young people. The towns around us and us are all aging. Our taxes are lower than some of the other towns. We have on that basis, we have the opportunity to keep more of our families either moving in younger or just staying when they graduate high school. But there's a real debate. Having people retire here with their pensions that's pretty good, but is that what we want? So it's a legitimate question.
Other comments from Sarah? Did you have anything?
I don't right now.
All right.
No.
No, all right, not there. Do you have anything? No, all right.
I have a question.
Susan, did you do? Yeah. Go ahead.
A good question is, one lot that has two different zonings on it. And it's my understanding that both Pine Street Landing and Marine Park are zoned to protect that property for our marine industry, so that they will always have access
That's correct.
to that. Is that correct? Now, the town landing is short to get to it. So that is all one zone, right?
I believe most of it extends and it's just in the shoreline. I do have to look at a map.
It's all orange
but-
on the map. When I
yeah.
looked at the map, that,
I think it's a
That was all-
little more
that
than
was
250, but
orange.
most of it is.
Effectively, it's one.
Yeah.
it looked like one spot. And Marine Park had a perimeter kind of line. But having been down there, that's a long road to get down there.
Yeah.
So that road then is not protected for marine usage? Or is
Well,
it?
just the
Is it-
portion that's within the 250.
In the 250,
Right
but,
away.
but from Dutch Neck Road
To that
to
shore.
that
to
part,
that
is that protected?
That's within 250 feet.
Well, the road, from Dutch Neck to the access road going in, that's in a residential area, and then it goes into the.
I think it's actually within.
It's on,
Oh,
it's on the water the whole
That's
way.
right, because
Follows
the
the
peninsula we had goes.
And actually, the
Yeah.
deed gives
Yeah.
one family total rights to the access,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, we want more than one family to
Well, if
access
you
that, I
have
hope.
creamery, you wanted everybody.
I just wanted to make sure that, by having two different zones, and I know that's caused issues in other situations where one plot of land has two different zones on it, and it's,
Yeah, that's not uncommon,
Yeah.
and your zoning ordinance has a mechanism for dealing with that, and, we could relook at that and see what it is, and I know in some other areas downtown, you mentioned store lumber, but some in Abden, and where you live too, we have shoreland zone and in other zones, and we're gonna relook at that to make sure it, take away some of the incongruity and confusion with some of the boundary lines, and just make sure that maybe we put things in one zone and make sure that whatever zone we pick is compatible with the two existing ones. Because that can create problems, and
Right.
needless problems.
right, needless problems, and that.
But in some other areas, it's what you want. There's a clear definition between the land at some point, so you would want the two different districts. And we do have that situation in other parts of town too, so. Abden?
I just want, this Abden Simmons, Selectman, Shellfish Committee Chair, State Rep, I even forget. But I think the biggest thing with the shoreline zoning and the stuff that's been done with it, and it's like the Marine Park, the planning board and anybody that's part of any development always comes to the Shellfish Committee to make sure that it's acceptable. So if it's not acceptable, we're gonna step up and say it's not acceptable. It's just like the project that was gonna go down to the Marine Park. They wanted to put oyster stuff overboard, and we said, no, absolutely not. If it was going to happen, it was gonna be a land-based project, period. They had to make sure the water was clean, and every other aspect of making sure that that was not in any way, shape, or form a factor of the river. So I think that's the biggest thing with we're just gonna use Marine Park as an example, is the planning board and the select board is very well aware of making sure the Shellfish Committee knows what's going on along the shore to protect that. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
So,
let me
you
just
know, if
read
something,
through them.
if it does happen and people decide that, fine, we'll allow something down there, it's not just gonna go in the next day. It's gonna jump through a lot of hoops before it even happens.
I just want to ask if there's any other comments on any other topic, or, I know we have some letters we want to make sure we get into the record. No, you go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
No, actually, good.
Don't be sorry.
Yeah, I gotta read
There's a
through
book
these.
over here.
Yeah.
Give Max some time.
So just,
You can give
it's
us a
more
copy of
comments.
that too, so we
I
can give
will
copies to
absolutely
them.
send you a copy. So under capital investments on 6-8, and again in the community vision goals, I didn't see Riverwalk specifically mentioned, or find increased public parking in the downtown business district mentioned. And I just personally, as a resident, I believe that investments in crucial infrastructure, either before or at least alongside the development of tourism marketing strategies, would keep the town from putting the cart before the horse. I also think that maybe improving, and I know that this is listed, improving the shoulders and the bicycle lanes along Route 32 and continuing the shoulders and the bicycle lanes onto Dutch Neck and Gross Neck Peninsula could allow bicyclists to get down from the downtown business and village districts to 4 of the natural assets on the peninsula, which would be Finch Sanctuary, GL Peters Pond Preserve, and the Marine Park. And I also wanted to note that a couple of those natural assets were missing from your inventory on page 9-13. I really like my area. Have I mentioned that? So then, kind of in the spirit of that, don't know what we can do. I'm still new to my role. But again, speaking as a resident, I just put forth any collaborative efforts to work with the current residential owners in the downtown business district in the hope of rezoning all first floor space to be either retail, commercial, or industrial use, whatever the final decision may be, to be done in the targeted and enthusiastic spirit of promoting economic development in the appropriate neighborhoods, as well as promoting a sense of unification and conformity in that neighborhood. Other pieces, so I noted that referencing page 8, I additionally agree that the town has not attracted a critical main anchor store, such as Rennie's in Damascotta or a Grasshopper Shop in Rockland. Something like an LL Bean Satellite or a Martin's might be worth an aggressive pursuit. And then finally, German heritage foods and history items are seemingly considered to be somewhat unique. In addition to the other arts and revitalization planning, it may be beneficial to incorporate some elements of German heritage into the farming and other attractions. If carefully incorporated with other maritime elements, this uniqueness could keep Waldoboro from losing its identity in a crowd of cookie-cutter Maine seaside towns. And it may also give you 2 separate marketing events to capitalize on, like a clam celebration in July and then a beer and brats in September. Just a thought there. So I do want to thank you. I'm sorry, it's long.
Turn it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
I
like
want
the
all the
copy of
words
that,
to
yeah.
get all the
We have a
regulations.
spot
Keep
for
them
you on
coming.
economic.
Oh, fantastic, I love that. So I do want to thank you all for your work on this document and for your continued commitment to public safety and public works, which was one of the reasons that I particularly picked coming to Waldoboro. So thank you so much.
Would you volunteer for running any of those events? We are short of volunteers
Yeah,
to
how
run
about an
events.
Oktoberfest to get into our German
They're working on that.
Technical assistance, yeah.
I mean, that's another note too.
You're on the
for
committee.
anyone here, we're gonna be trying to fill other committees, so if you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
make sure you sign up, because there'll be, if the plan is passed in June, somewhere within a month or 2 after that, we'll be soliciting for a lot of participation, so we've got your name if you signed up there on that. We're not bashful on that.
We need to get a Morse's sauerkraut with
Yep.
inside
Yeah,
of Route
good.
1.
Yeah, that's right.
We have a comment.
No, I just have one question. I know you mentioned before, and I understand the process before you can apply for grants, which I've done many times professionally, but you need to have some type of plan, official plan that's accepted and whatever, which is great. It's in place now, and I appreciate the work on that. there any pre-planning or interest in pursuing through Maine Department of Marine Resources, those shorefront and harbor development grants?
I think they
Has
are.
actually gotten
I
those.
mean, even just to do a study on like some of these
Yeah.
main issues, like what would be,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of very, like quite a range of different towns and cities from Portland to, you know, little tiny places that receive these.
The fellow that was interested in potentially growing oysters on shore, he was on the cover of Life magazine a long time ago because he did it in Hawaii on
Yeah.
land. Very, very interesting gentleman. He's the one who's growing the oysters. He was not well received the night he was in this room. And he is also a guy who's gotten an awful lot of National Science Foundation grant, MTI grants. He's a
Yeah, I read the background.
yeah. He and the town were considering some of those cross-feeding grants, but he kind of pulled back when he saw the reception.
Well, you can get a grant to do a study about.
That's exactly.
That was what they wanted to do.
They were just gonna do the study from that.
Yeah.
That's what
And
had it.
we also had one of those grants a year ago that didn't work out for the landing right here in the
Pine
village, Pine Street Landing. So the town is is aggressively looking for grants to specifically figure things out for stuff.
Julie just came back in the room, was very tuned into the grant possibilities.
I understand that. My thought on this, in a general sense, if this is, you know, a real interest and potentially a great thing for the area, maybe this is not the ideal spot for it either because of the nature of the surrounding area. Maybe there's a place, someplace else in town where such a facility might more easily be developed and make just as much or more sense. That's what I'm talking about, is if there was a study that looked at all the aspects of it and said, hey, you know, yeah, that is, I mean, even politically, it doesn't make sense or whatever.
The reason that discussion began was because that's as far up as the deep water goes, which you need for most of these things. You're pumping water out of the river. And it was also town property. I don't think, as you go down the neck, I don't believe there's anybody who wants to sell land to anything.
And it isn't deep water enough in many
Well,
areas.
you're further down, there's more deep water down by the Narrows, but
Yeah.
it seemed like
There
an
is-
awful steep hill to climb.
There is work being done in that area to identify the most opportune places for aquaculture and other things, but it's limited by funding. Funding is severely limited. But they've done quite a bit on the Dharmascotta River, and they're working out from there. But you've got years to go, because the amount of money dedicated to that is, really not enough to meet the demand for what we're seeing in the new industries and things like that.
The state is very oriented in all the granting bodies to aquaculture.
Yeah.
It's a real focus.
Is there anything else? Because if we're not, then I know we've got some letters and we want to make sure that they're very in tune with what, some of the things you were saying, but we want to make sure that they're read or at least paraphrased into the record, and all the members of the committee have received those letters, so they're doing. But I want to spend a couple of minutes just doing that, and then we'll ask if there's any more questions after that. I don't want to put this to an end, but we seem to have come to a point where
You'll have all
we've
these?
kind of exhausted
Those
our
aren't letters, those are Facebook comments.
our input. You are certainly able to continue to send comments to us. You have our emails, Max's email, and we're more than happy to speak with you. Or if you'd like to speak with us on any other issues or ideas that you have, or willingness to volunteer for something, our ears perk up when people say that, so please feel free on that. And Max, would you mind just...
Yes.
Yeah, I would, some of them are fairly lengthy. Would anyone object if we paraphrase some of them at all, or some?
Yeah. So, I'll just read some of the part. I'm going to be skipping over some of the parts that have been said already and are a bit redundant, and all the formality issues like hello, I can't come to the meeting, and all those things. So this first one comes from Elaine Abel, and also if I mess up the names, I'm sorry. I'm just one of those people who can never get the name right. So this is from Elaine Abel. It is my understanding that the comprehensive plan is not actually regulation, but a guide to how this committee works in conjunction with discussion from many townspeople envision how they would like to see the town grow. It is important as it defines the mindset of the town when and if there are zoning land disputes. I have a few questions and concerns with the proposed plan. On page 25, the Historic Village District, it states that new uses should be required to maintain the exterior character of the structures and improvements such as parking, accessory buildings, and so on. Development should be guided by ordinance design performance standards. I am concerned that we are adding an arbitrary level of scrutiny to a permitting process. Who will be the judge of what is consistent with 19th century architecture, design standards? Will this preclude people from putting solar panels, hardy plank on their buildings, or placing contemporary sculptures on their front yard? Do you want me to just keep going, or do you want to answer that question first?
No, just so we can get it.
A little louder, please, Max.
Okay. And then going on to inconsistencies regarding Dutch Neck Marine Park. This boat landing is located in a residential zone and has historically been residential. The Commercial Fisheries and Maritime Activity Zone came into being so that the commercial clam diggers in town would never have to fear losing the ability to access the water so they could continue their livelihood. It is very apparent from the above noted sections that although the town wants to protect their natural resource, the Madomic River, they also want to utilize the Dutch Neck Landing for more invasive commercial purposes, which are completely incompatible with the surrounding residential area. It is doubtful that the town would consider such a drastic zone change if the property were in private ownership. By extending the 250-foot setback, you are setting the stage to permit with planning board approval industrial and commercial uses and prohibiting residential uses. This is not in keeping with the neighborhood, nor is it consistent with the plan's own goals. A few other observations. On page 24, clarify the relationship between the land use districts and the shoreland zoning districts to make it clear that the only requirements of a shoreland zone apply to the land contained in the shoreland district. This is inconsistent with the current land use regulations on page 8. Conflicts with other ordinances whenever a provision of this ordinance conflicts with or is inconsistent with another provision of the ordinance or of any other ordinance, regulation, or statute, the more restrictive provision shall control. And lastly, it is a bit redundant to mention no fewer than 5 times that the municipal sewer be expanded to the industrial park and the Waldoboro Business Park. While this could be potentially helpful for economics of Waldoboro, cost benefit of such a project would be against potential projects in which citizens may derive more benefits. So that was one, poorly paraphrased, but that was one. Second one comes from Missy. Did you want to answer any of the questions?
No,
just for the record, okay. Second one comes from Missy and Jay Hall. We own a home on Dutch Neck Road with waterfront on the Madomic River. In the first place, and we are against the 250-foot setback. In the first place, expanding commercial use of the marine park land runs the risk of harming the pristine environment and valuable resource that is the Madomic River and its shorefront. And expansion also is contradictory to the own comprehensive plan that we have made. On page 13, previous efforts to improve water quality have created a thriving shellfish industry, but more needs to be done to continue water quality improvements throughout the town. And on that same page, page 13, the continued protection of shoreland areas protected under shoreland zoning are important to maintain water quality along the coast and inland waters. And then that was that letter. And I got, I believe, 4 more to go through. Next one is Nadine Gertz. Again, most of it was already said, so I'll just get to the last part of it, since I know no one wants to hear my voice for too long. removing protections that current zoning provides is not a minor change. As proposed for Dutch Neck, this wording in the draft comprehensive plan opens up possibilities of major and irreversible land use changes on Dutch Neck that are not wise decisions. I strongly disagree with the language in the draft plan and hope you will act to drop it from the draft. Penelope Johnston. I, for one, would like to know why and who proposed the name change of Dutch Neck Landing to Dutch Neck Marine Park. Was this done because of the proposed land use change as referenced in the draft of comprehensive plan? I thought and still do believe Dutch Neck Landing was just fine. I would like to state for the record that I am opposed to the land use change proposal as referenced above. Thank you. Next is Frank Abel. I am strongly opposed to extending the shoreland district boundaries on the Dutch Neck Marine Park. By doing this, you are opening up possibility of commercial industrial buildings in a residential area. I do not believe there are any commercial buildings within at least a 5-mile radius of this parcel of land. Please reconsider adding this recommendation to the comprehensive plan. Last one, Elise Wright. And this is the one I didn't have time to quickly paraphrase.
I believe it probably.
It's
says that, yeah,
it's
same
all
thing,
the
right?
same regarding past plans, identifying the town preserving the Menominee River. I'll just read her final paragraph. In short, the proposed zoning revision in the draft comprehensive plan in the long run would not provide a sustainable solution to current financial challenges the town faces. I can totally appreciate why this comprehensive plan committee wants to recalibrate the sources of tax revenue and shift some of the key burden from residents, 58%, to commercial enterprises, 16%. This is a worthy goal. There are better ways to achieve that fiscal balance without compromising the historical ethos of the town. Rather, I recommend the CP committee and the Economic Development Committee explore better commercial options that protect the river and thereby the town's residents. The two are inextricably linked.
Thank you very much, Matt.
And then the stuff that I got mailed in. No, just kidding.
Oh, my God.
One of the little details that we haven't really focused on as precisely as we should, in my opinion, is numerically the involvement of individuals on these various points of being contested. How many people are we opening up a particular road to? How many people are we opening up various portions of relatively low-impact land? We need to pay very careful attention to how many people we're bringing to some of these details that may overwhelm them and create a situation we don't want to deal with. I think we've all got to pay careful attention to the numbers involved and how this is going to work out.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good, very good point. I'm just going to, go ahead, John.
I am John Lawrence, and I live in North Waldoboro. I've been hearing all about the beautiful coast, and I spent most of my life living on the coast, so close that my lawnmower was rusted every spring, and I had to get out. And I think I'm here to talk about balance a little bit here. North Waldoboro is a rural community, and we are underserved by services. And that's an issue in itself, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the environment up there. Recreation. There's other forms of recreation than being on the water in a tippy kayak or out on the ocean enjoying going around the ledge in the islands, as I've done all my life. Also, in North Waldoboro, we have a lack of public access to trails. This is the first community that I've ever lived in, and I've had horses for 30 years, that thinks that horses create erosion. I've never heard that any place before I moved here, as an example. So I think we have a broader recreational need to attract people in North Waldoboro that have other interests than being on the water. And I'd like to see some focus on that, besides just pushback against the invasion of a potential park on one of the pristine pieces of property. Thank you.
That's
Can
a
I
good
ask a
point.
question?
Yes.
You live in North Waldoboro. Do you live near Quarry Hill?
Yes, I do.
Would you enjoy seeing riding trails or any kinds of trails put in up there? Because the town could do that. We just haven't gotten the momentum yet to do it. But is that something you would like to see from the town?
Well, from the reception I recently got when I was up there by the two existing landowners that live there, I'm not sure I would.
I got a door slammed in my face.
Whoa, that wasn't.
Yeah, a little
No, actually, the snowmobile trails go through there, and there's a lot of other trails. That's something we could look into as well.
Clary Hill is in the view from my beautiful farmland, yet I can't get there from my house without getting in a vehicle. And then when I go to that area, there's no place to park.
John, it might be a good idea to attend one of the Conservation Commission meetings, because they would like to hear.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah, some of those.
actually, John, after the meeting, find me and I want to talk to you about that very topic. So,
Yeah.
but Ted had his hand up.
I was merely going to comment on the fact Waldoboro is part of a very extensive snowmobile trail system in the state of Maine, and the ability to maintain that with perhaps less and less snow and more people using it for other purposes, we got to pay very careful attention to how we want to relate to that whole situation.
Yeah.
Definitely needs some study.
The
There is a
snowmobile trail
recommend-
goes right through the Waldoboro Business Park.
Yeah.
We allow that, encourage it.
There is a recommendation in the plan to create a master trail plan that addresses all users. And this is one of those 50-year projects, because we have trails here, there, and it's a matter of, it takes time to connect. There was a wonderful job that they did from Unity to Belfast. And they actually did that within like 2 years. It was amazing. And that's a crowd of people that Max has been talking to. Because, they did it, with a combination of public land and snowmobile trails and private land. And if you can walk it, sometimes you go off to the road and here and there, but it's you could literally go from the coast to inland. So that's something that I know we're very interested in, having that happen, because trails are popular. Commercial.
Because without trail systems, we're losing people up in our area because they're having to leave in order to have places to ride. They can't ride in their areas. They have to go off. They have to go to Vermont. They have to go to New Hampshire or Acadia Park. And what we had to do is ride on the dirt roads. But then the dirt roads are being blacktopped. And we would ride up so you use the dirt road areas, and then you're having houses built on the land, and they won't allow us to, go around the edge and go through. So all those areas are being sucked up, and so the people that, come to Waldoboro, to North Waldoboro, for the recreation of having horses and the trails, they're all drying up, and so there's no place to do it and to access. And if they do have some trails, then how do we get to them? And they have to give us areas to put our trailers and in order to get in there and that kind of thing. So it's not a simple kind of issue. And so I'm just, saying.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If we're talking about
I
recreation.
think,
we got-
the snowmobile folks went homeowner to homeowner, they came to me and made arrangements to allow, and it's insurance things, everything. But I think it's a real process, but it can be done, and it's on private property.
One of the advantages of snowmobile trails, it occurs on frozen ground in the winter, and that sometimes makes a difference. So there's a different dynamic.
Yeah, there's been some talk about asking the snowmobilers to allow, and their clients, to allow hiking and perhaps even horses and dirt bikes on their trails, and I don't think this would really work. But maybe hike, but the homeowners, in many cases, would not say, would say, we just want people coming by when there's snow on the ground.
Ted, you had a
Well,
mind to say something.
Unfortunately, I think horseback riding may be combined with ATVs, and a lot of people have some very serious problems with ATVs where young people are using them that don't understand the consequences of what they're creating, and we probably need a little presentation of some scientific evidence as to how horses affect some of these areas. Leaving a very minute amount of fertilizer behind is not all that detrimental.
And it's a very horses are natural to the farm area
Yeah.
up there, and people come and want that area for the farm and the riding and the animals, et cetera, and when you can't even utilize that area any longer, it's losing its farm quality for people.
I had heard that there was a zoning restriction that precluded large animal veterinarians from operating in this town. Is that still true?
It happened 10 years ago in this
Yeah.
town.
I thought it was changed.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
It's
not-
been changed.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Finally been changed? Okay.
Yeah, that was something when, yeah.
On Filer's Corner Road.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't make quite, I mean, a little-known planning secret, when we look at rural areas, we count the number of horse owners, and that gives us an indication of the health of the rural area.
Now,
One of those little anecdotal things.
can I ask, do we have any kind of a reciprocal kind of sharing agreement with MVLT? Because they have a lot of land, what do they have on Route 32? They've got a huge parcel of carriage.
Well, let me just explain a little bit, but
Yeah.
there's something about preserves that's owned by the land trust, and then there's something else called easements that's
Yeah.
owned by the landowner. In fact, Quarry Hill is owned by the town of Waldeboro, but the land trust monitors and supervises whatever is done on that land to make sure that, somebody doesn't build deer blinds in the trees or doesn't start cutting down the trees in the woods. So the land trust monitors easements, they don't own it. So we can't, if the private owner wants to open up their land for public access, and they do that, and they ask us to help maintain the trails, we do that too. But if it's an easement, it's strictly up to the private owner what kind of access they want. And as far as reciprocal access, the Madomic Valley trails on preserves are open to the public. And we actually have a nice little watershed trail map that not only includes our trails, but all of the town trails. And there's a clear little symbols that tell you whether it's dog-friendly, whether dogs need to be on a leash, if it's strenuous, if it's an easy walk, if there's water nearby. There's a nice little map if you go to the office, or actually there's a bunch of them here on the table out here.
Are any of them accessible to horses?
Not many are that wide. Not many are wide. Many of them are narrow because it was meant for foot traffic only. It was designed for that in many cases. In some cases, it's difficult to make it wide. Some are on the ledge of a brook or a stream or something, so it's not that easy. But I want to just point out that it's very valuable that you make these comments at this meeting, because I don't think we took into consideration much about horse trails at all in our comprehensive plan. And I'm not a horse person, a lot of people here weren't. We're not representing all of the diversity of the town, so we need this kind of input. And gosh, that just turned a light bulb up in my head.
There are about 50 horse owners up in North Waldeboro, as a rough estimate.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's usually 2 or 3 horses at least in those situations,
And
so.
it's certainly a resource and potential for growth. If
To
you
close,
have-
to close the question on the area on 32 with the beautiful carriage trails, that's under easement from Pat Spofford, but she has limited public access. So if you want to ride there, and those are beautiful trails, because we go through them every year to look at them.
There's no place to park.
Yeah, no, there's a place to park.
I think there is.
There is a place, I mean, even her driveway, but she limits access for hunting.
She
for-
does give permission. If you were to ask specifically for permission, you could get it. And she has a horse barn we can drive through into the horse barn. And there is a meadow you can drive back around. She obviously brought her trailers and her horses there for years. But that you'd have to open up the barn that you pull in, and you do have to get permission from her specifically.
And that again is an
We've been down
easement.
that road already, and I gave up on it without making any more noise, so I've stopped.
Okay. I mean,
I
this is
think, John,
an easement from a private
You're
landowner.
willing, I
The
think that's a
MVLT
good
has no-
conversation to have with them for the future, absolutely.
In the state of Vermont, where I thought I was gonna live happily ever after until I ended up here in Maine, where I'm happy.
Good thing you said that.
I have a prerequisite
Good start.
for equestrian use for public land. And if you donate your land to be used in a land trust arrangement, it becomes public to some degree. And within the definition over there, you have to, before they can accept it in their state law, they have to present a proposal of what the public uses will be, should they take that land and reduce the burden of the tax to the landowner.
Right.
That
Sounds familiar.
philosophy in Vermont has a lot more equestrian activity, and there's no discussion about erosion over there either, by the way. And there's snow machines on it in the wintertime, but there are no ATVs in there, they don't let them in. And that's a typical northern Vermont scenario that I've just described.
Why don't we wrap this up? Unless there's any other questions, we kind of exhausted our, I think, our capacity for comments, unless there's anything else?
I have just,
Go.
it's such a, in the grand scheme of things
Sure.
here, this is such a superficial thing. But I wondered about the median strips at either end of town, by the West Main Street entrance.
Yeah,
And then on the corner of Jefferson and Route 1.
all right.
Are those DOT maintained?
Julie's nodding her head, yes. they are.
Okay.
It's DOT, we are in discussion with them because they're gonna be overlaying Route 1 again. There is going to be some changes to at least the one on Jefferson Street.
In terms of aesthetics?
Well, I'm not sure.
I'm just
We're
so-
working on it, we're trying, and the Garden Club is trying
Yeah.
to improve the aesthetics of all of those.
Okay, and they
medians, but
do a great job, and I'm just so happy with Friendship Street, the little village with all the beautiful, I'm so happy every time I drive by there, and
Yeah.
everybody takes such pride. And I think coming into Waldeboro from either end, to see weeds and, is just
we are in
not a
discussions
good.
with them.
The Conservation Committee is also working with the
Garden
Garden
Club.
Club.
The
and
garden
they're-
club's doing all the work.
And they're looking for volunteers in town to help them, because there's not enough of them. There's a lot of aged out
I
people.
was saying,
And
yeah,
they,
probably
and
getting-
people need to be aware that if they like to garden, that it would be lovely to have some help.
On a happy note too, you're gonna see flags popping up on the flagpoles.
Oh, good.
And you're going to
Flag
see,
program.
At the budget committee, we approved the LED street lighting, so we have
Oh,
county
good.
Yay.
historic LED street lighting. We're hoping with the arms that
Oh,
have
wonderful. That
the
look-
ability to have the LEDs that look in character to the historical part of town, and maybe some hanging baskets, so we're aware, we're trying, it takes,
It takes
a
time.
while.
And money.
Takes
You're
a
gonna
while.
supply the hummingbirds too?
I can survive, but yeah, those are all things that we have planned, and also the farmer's market's going to be here on site, here at the town office. So again, the more we can have a vibrant downtown, the more we can grow it.
Remind the Garden Club, we have a generous fertilizer company in Waldeboro.
I'll tell Steve.
We will remind them, yes.
Well, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. Your comments were well appreciated, and thank you extremely very much for your input on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you and Max for an
Yeah.
incredible job.
Oh, my
A year and a
gosh.
half ago, I said, we're never going to finish this out. And you guys came through.
Good to see you.